Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry that I have not been on here doing recordings for the past month or so. A lot of you that follow my channel know that I have a son he was born with some medical issues. He's overall doing well now, but he has a lot of GI, gastrointestinal digestive disorders, and he had a flare of a condition that I had thought he had grown out of because he hasn't had this happen in the past few years, but he had a really terrible flare. It was very, very painful for him. At times he was going 10 to 15 hours crying and in pain, and it was really consuming. So it really wasn't possible for me to plan or record episodes. The good news is he's doing great now. He's feeling much, much better. So I'm back, and I'll be back weekly just as normal, and I apologize that it really came on without any kind of warning. I kept meaning to get on here and just give a quick update to let you know I'd be back, and it just wasn't even possible to do that. So thanks so much for your understanding and your patience with that. Again, he's totally feeling much, much better. We're so happy. And, it was, like I said, it was really frustrating because he hadn't had this for 3 years, and we just thought that it was over. So we're in hopes. I consulted with a really amazing guy who has a PhD in nutrition and knows all about this particular condition. And so we're hoping that it will just be smooth sailing from here and that he won't have any more of these flares. So, well, you may remember the last video was about dating and relationships when you've been raised by a covert narcissist. The next part I recorded is about friendships, and not necessarily about befriending narcissists, although that's definitely common and possible, and it's happened in my own life, but also just unhealthy relationships in general. We're really vulnerable. Those of us who have been raised by covert narcissists who were scapegoats, we're very vulnerable to having histories just full of unhealthy relationships, and even our present time being full of unhealthy relationships. And this episode ended up being really long. I realized it's a lot to take in just in one setting. So I actually divided it into 3 parts. Today's part is going to be rather short. Basically, what I'm going to do is share a relationship from a long time ago that I've had off and on throughout my life, and finally am out of it now. Not a dating relationship, just a friendship that I had starting in middle school and high school and beyond. That's all that's going to be in today's episode. Next week, I'm going to talk about a more recent relationship that I have recognized is unhealthy and what happened there. And then the third part of this is going to be about how to better recognize unhealthy relationships and healthy ones too. Not just red flags, which we talked about a lot in the last, in the part 1 of this, but about how to find the good signs to see that you're in a healthy relationship. And the reason I'm going through the 2 friendships I had that were unhealthy is my guess is, if you're like me, if your mother is a covert narcissist, you're a scapegoat, you've probably had a lot of unhealthy relationships in your life as well. And in the very first part of this, I'll explain why that is. And my guess is that you'll be able to recognize certain things in friendships that you've had as I describe these relationships and what was wrong with them. And then I'll be using them as examples for what I should have recognized earlier on. Not to blame myself or to shame myself, but to see moving forward, to be watching for those signs when I meet somebody and am developing a friendship, to watch for that. And if I see those warning signs, then to pull back. We are capable of growing and healing and having healthy relationships in our lives. And I hope this 3 parts to this episode that I'll be sharing over the next few weeks is really going to help you with that. It really helped me just to think through it all and to do some thinking and reflecting on that. And I invite you to join me and do the same. So with that, here's part 1 to this episode. Those of us who are scapegoat children of covert narcissist mothers, we tend to have very unhealthy relationships in our lives. For one, we don't know what healthy relationships even look like because of how we were raised. We weren't raised with healthy relationships. So unhealthy, even abusive relationships can seem normal to us, so we just don't recognize when we're in an unhealthy relationship. And when you add to that we felt so lonely growing up, really a depth of loneliness most other people don't understand, and we're doing everything we can to avoid feeling that. And being in a relationship or spending time with somebody who is mistreating us can seem preferable to feeling that immense sense of isolation and loneliness. And we tend to put up with a lot of mistreatment in our relationships because we had to do that to survive our upbringing. It can be very easy for us to look past really terrible things. And like I said, because we had to as children. The problem is that becomes a habit that extends into relationships where we actually don't have to do it. Where walking away is an option. I'm sure if your mother is a covert narcissist and you were the scapegoat child like I was, you've probably experienced something similar to what I have. And it's like experiencing a secondary abuse. Because we can be no contact with our mothers, we can draw lines that prevent them from directly mistreating us, and yet we can still end up mistreated because of the effects the abuse of our mothers had on us. When I was in high school, I had a best friend, and we did everything together, and I really mean everything. I have few memories of being anywhere outside of my home when I wasn't with her. She was really selfish, and I met her in a church youth group that I attended, and so many people in the youth group used to ask me, how can you be such good friends with her? She's so selfish. And in a way, I understood what they were saying. She was selfish. It actually just drove me crazy. Sometimes we argued about how selfish she was. But I never thought she'd be that way toward me. I had to learn the hard way that the way someone treats most people in their life, if they're not treating you that way now, it's only a matter of time before they do. My friend was very spoiled. She herself was from a broken home with all kinds of dysfunction. Her dad, I'm pretty sure, was a narcissist. We even thought so back then. Not even a covert narcissist. He was just a terrible, terrible person. And if he wasn't, he was very selfish and unable to care about anyone but himself. And he used to make up for that by buying her anything that she wanted. When she graduated from high school, he bought her a house, he bought her a car when she turned 16. When she didn't like that car, he bought her another one. She always seemed to kind of get off on the fact that she had so much more than me. I wore her clothes a lot when we were in high school because my mom wouldn't buy clothes that I liked. She would only buy clothes that she liked, which were usually very out of style and embarrassing to wear, so I would wear my friends' clothes. I was at her mom's house a lot. Her parents were divorced, and we didn't see her dad a whole lot. She had a pretty good mom, and I loved being there. She knew my mother was terrible to me, and I think she even kind of got off a little on that she had a better mom than me. When we became adults, I went to college, and she didn't. Everything had always been very easy for her because her dad pretty much fixed everything. Every time she made a mistake, he would just jump in and pay money to fix whatever was going on. So the idea of going to college, she said later on, was really scary to her. When I graduated from college, I purchased a small house. I had a respectable job, and she was working at a restaurant flipping hamburgers. Now, please don't take that the wrong way. If that's the job you had, that is a respectable job. But in her mind, it wasn't. And I didn't know it at the time, but she could not stand seeing that I had a job and an office with a title, I had a college degree, I had a house, and she was working what she perceived as a low-level, non-respectable job. And she's just out of the blue stopped being friends with me. We had been extremely close friends for a decade. And just like that, she was gone. I had really shared my heart with her, but she had not behaved in a way to earn that position in my life. I just wasn't able to see that. And really, it took a few years to recover from that. And then shortly after that, she came back into my life. And this happened a few different times. A few years ago, she did it to me again, and I finally recognized this pattern. She came back into my life after she graduated from college, and she became a teacher, and suddenly we could be friends again. Every time she sought me out and expressed a desire to restore our friendship, something big was going wrong in my life, and something really great was going right in hers. The last time that she came into my life, we had not spoken in 11 years. She had heard that I had had a baby born 3 months early with a heart defect. He was 2 years old. He spent most of the first year of his life in the intensive care unit. I lost my career that I'd worked very hard for because his medical needs were so great. I wasn't able to work at all the first couple years of his life. And even after that, I could only work very part-time. My finances were an absolute disaster. I had wiped out my savings. I had cashed in all my retirement, everything just to keep the bills paid. She had always dreamed of being an author, and she had become one. She was a self-published author and doing very well. She was really happy with her life, and suddenly she wanted to be friends with me again, and I took her back. She apologized. She seemed sincere. I thought, well, she's matured and she's changed, and we can have a good relationship now. And I was so happy. That lasted for a couple of years. My son, fortunately, started to get healthier. He was recovering. He had a stroke during his, after a heart surgery he had that had a lot of complications. He didn't walk independently until he was 5 years old, but he was learning to walk. He was talking. He wasn't on any medications. He was now on just annual visits with his cardiologist. I had published a couple books as well. And while I was far from wealthy, my finances were getting better. My life was getting better and better, and we were coming out of that major crises. And she developed a health problem herself right around that time. She was in the hospital frequently. She hadn't been able to write any books. And nothing even happened between us. She just ghosted me. We didn't get in an argument. There hadn't been any problems that I knew of. She just stopped talking to me. And I was so upset. I couldn't believe that she was doing this to me again. And when she had come back that time, I had told her that she has to promise she's not going to do this to me again, where everything seems fine and then all of a sudden she doesn't want to be friends. And she did it anyway. I have had so many relationships in my life like this, where I trusted people that I shouldn't have, where there were all kinds of red flags and signs that these people were not healthy. And I don't think a person needs to be completely healthy, but they do need to be capable of having healthy relationships. I'm not healthy. I'm recovering from decades of abuse, but I'm working on myself, and I definitely am working on my relationships. And if you're doing that, you can have healthy relationships. That is the end of part 1 of this episode. I know this was a shorter one. Next week's going to be a little bit longer, and I'll be talking about something that happened very recently, just within the last couple months, that has happened in a friendship that I have come to see is really unhealthy. I really hope that this 3-part episode is going to help you just improve the relationships that you have, the friendships that you have, and empower you and enable you to protect yourself from unhealthy relationships. I'll see you next week, and please remember, to all my fellow survivors, you are worthy, you are valuable, and you are beautiful, whether your mom sees that or not.